And the other question was, does the lender do underwriting in-house? And then, you know, so it kind of breaks it down like that, showings. You would schedule 3 to 5 homes per day. If they have small kids, then you would advise not to bring them just because it's distracting. I'm a mom of 2. They're little, and so I understand that's definitely distracting. Some people may be available during the week, so also offer to do weekday tours, and definitely know their musts and their non-negotiable items for their home. And then just continue to break down the list. When you do the offer, in CAR forms, the RPA comes with a bunch of other documents, and those documents are here: the agency disclosure, the possible representation of more than one buyer, the wire fraud, the fair housing discrimination advisory, and then you know, we're going over the RPA with Herminia right now, so it was discussing what contingencies can be removed, and then discussing with the lender if that's possible, and if we're, you know, removing the appraisal contingency, then other funds available to cover the extra that they'll need if that
Closing costs.
Right, the closing costs if the house is not appraised. So then the, you know, buyer's inspection advisory and the California Consumer Privacy Act. So it's also a checklist, but also a little bit of a timeline. And so it continues, you know, if you get a response, do they accept it? Do they not? Is it a counter offer? And, or are you at a backup offer? And so one of the questions was like, how long do we wait if we're a backup offer? Does the buyer still have the ability to put other offers? And the answer was yes, we can continue to put offers until we get one. And if we're still waiting as a backup offer, then we have, you know, I would say like 20 days to check in with the seller's agent to see how that transaction is going, if it's going to close or not. And then once the offer is accepted, then you move on to escrow. So seller agent communicates with escrow, and then escrow is open. And then it goes to explaining the documents, the instructions being emailed from escrow to the agents and the buyer. Customary is 3% for the earnest money deposit, and it's due within 3 business days from offer acceptance. Then page 10 from the RPA is going to be returned to us, the agents and the lender, signed by the escrow as acknowledgement of that they received, correct?
Yes. This is what the lenders need before they can order the disclosure. So it's very important.
And between that, I guess any amendments we need to communicate with escrow so they're aware. And so I wrote for my own, you know, timeline. It's schedule vendors immediately once you open escrow as a buyer agent. So, you know, the inspector and the appraisal. So the appraisal gets ordered by the lender and paid by the buyer, and the report will be given to the lender, but also the buyer can request to see. Then I have reports. Reports were pretty much, I didn't change anything. I just added a couple days. Okay. You know, our inspection report, the buyer pays, buyer receives the results. Preliminary title is ordered by escrow, and it's given to
the buyer and seller, to the buyers.
Okay, so gonna buyer and seller within 2-3 days. With the termite report, it was, you know, it's either waived or not, paid by the buyer, and the results for us to receive, but we won't not include them in RPA and will not be given to escrow. Once, if escrow was to receive a report where a house has termites, then the lender is going to ask for that to be treated, right, before
Correct.
the closing of escrow, and that will delay whatever whatever timeframe we've planned. And so it's best to discuss and negotiate that outside of the RPA. And then, the natural hazard report, also ordered by escrow, buyer needs to acknowledge. And then the other report was ZIMA. Yeah.
ZIMA's report is optional.
It's optional. So only if the property is in the city of LA.
Yeah.
And then
it's not a must. It's an optional report.
And then the disclosures, and the importance of the dates, requests in the TDS prior to your own inspection as a buyer agent, requesting those so that once you schedule the inspector, then the inspector will see if there are any issues that he should focus on. Yeah, so the time frame was 7 days to receive all of the following disclosures that we see on the screen. And then giving it back to them, assuming we're accepting there's nothing wrong with the property. And then, the RPA says 17 days, but if we want to make our offer better, then we would do 7, 8, or 9, I wrote.
Yes.
More desirable in the RPA. And one of the things that Demetra said in one of the classes was that the seller credit cannot exceed more than 3% of the purchase price. Because this is when we're negotiating if there's something wrong with the house, the property, then, instead of fixing it, instead of doing, I guess you would write it in the request for repair, correct?
Correct.
And you would fill out request for repair, and you would include there that it would be a credit to buyer towards their closing costs.
Never ever send anything to escrow to say seller is crediting buyer $5,000 toward repairs. Never, ever, because then the lender will come back and say, what repairs are we talking about?
Mm-hmm.
So make sure that it's always, the credit is always toward buyer's recurring and non-recurring closing costs. Go ahead, continue.
Okay. And then if there, as I guess the transaction is proceeding, then you would remove contingencies. If you have not started in the RPA with contingencies removals, then you would fill out contingency removal 1 and so forth until the final one where you remove all contingencies. There's repair. And then comes the closing docs when the disclosures have been sent to escrow. And these are the list of the documents that we would receive from escrow. There's also a, within that time frame, I know as a buyer, you're choosing your fire insurance. That's information you have to give escrow. So I wrote it here for my notes. But then you've confirmed home warranty, and there's also a
you said buyer to choose natural hazard insurance. No, that's fire insurance and liability insurance. It's not natural hazard, it's different. That's the NHD. So here you have to say buyer to choose the insurance and inform the escrow company who is the insurance. And you do this not in the last day, but you do this like at least 10 days before close of escrow. So the insurance company has the time to do whatever investigation. Sometimes if the property is on the high fire zone area, you may not be able to find insurance, and finding an insurance for your property is a must. Mm-hmm. So if you are selling properties in hillside, in high fired area, you do insurance way in the beginning to see if you can even find insurance company to insure your property. Because if you can't even buy this property.
Okay, okay. So I will move this up in my checklist and change it to fire and I guess general liability insurance. And there is the visual, did I not put it in here? I must have missed it. The visual inspect, here it is, the buyer to sign verification of final inspection, 5 days.
5 days
5
prior.
days prior to closing. That was it.
Okay, the final hot closing statement is basically you can ask the escrow company few days before the close of escrow to send an estimated buyer or seller net closing cost. So the buyer will have an idea how much money they need to bring to the escrow in addition to their down payment. If you're representing the seller, you want to have to verify to make sure all the expenses are correct and there is nothing missing or double charge or whatever. Okay, Luz, thank you so much for preparing this. If you don't mind, I would like to share this with the group and so that they can use it too.
Yeah, absolutely. I will
Thank you
send you
again.
another one, fixing the